Like Aesop's fox and the grapes, the parable where the fox is trying to get the grapes and he realizes he can't reach them, so he says, I never wanted them anyway, they're probably sour, right?
Right.
So that's what physicists are like with quantum mechanics. Like now, if you try to understand it at a deep level, they disrespect you. You're like, why are you wasting your time doing that when we could be calculating some numbers, right?
Ego and knowledge. It's always a weird combination. I've always assumed when I was younger that, well, when you get to the highest levels of science or, any sort of intellectual pursuit, that the people that are really involved, there wouldn't be any ego issues. It would all, you're laughing, see? As an outsider, I was like, well, there's ego in every other part of the world, but those super smart dudes that are figuring everything out, they got all that stuff locked down.
Kind of the opposite of that.
Really?
Yeah, really.
That's so disappointing.
And I love them. These are my people,
Right.
And but it's well, I'll explain quantum mechanics eventually.
Okay,
but
please.
But you are right. This ego thing. One thing about academia, being a professor, right, whether it's science or anything else, is that you are constantly being evaluated by every other person you meet. There's a hierarchy. There's a rank, how good you are at everything, right? And it's not written down necessarily. There's not a rankings that appear in the sports pages, but everyone is judging you all the time. And, my students and so forth, they say, well, I don't like to ask questions in a seminar because I worry that someone's going to be judging me. And all I can say is that, yes, they are going to be judging you.
God, that's so crazy.
And even at the very, 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 very tippy top, it's like, am I number 2 or number 3, right? And it's very sad. And it's not everyone's like that, but most people in the field get to be like that, and probably it helps forward the advance of science, right?
The competitive nature of it all.
Yeah, it's competitive and egotistical, and they want to do better than everybody else and prove that they're better. And I'm sure Einstein and Newton were just as driven by that as anybody else.
Isn't it weird? It seems like human beings need that comparative sort of competition thing going on in order to forward whatever they're doing. They need peers. They need some sort of...
It helps. It's there, yeah. We live in a world with scarce resources, right? Some of us are going to live longer than others. Some of us are going to get tenure, and some of us are not. And some of us are going to be Nobel Prize winners, and some are not. So no matter what, there's going to be competition. Yeah.
Yeah, and in your field, there is a big issue, I guess, with people disregarding other people's discoveries, or wanting to, rather, like wanting to poo-poo things. And
I think this is a very complicated issue that I don't really have clear, because certainly scientists can be very, very supportive of each other under the right circumstances, but they're human beings. There's all sorts of cognitive biases that they have, prejudices, Bayesian priors for what's likely to be true, what's not likely to be true. And it's not just perfect reasoning, perfect rationality, right? People come in with their prejudices, and if you go and tickle their preconceived notions, they'll think you're great. And if you say something that doesn't quite fit into what they're thinking about, then they'll sort of look somewhere else.
Diminish you. Do you teach this when you're teaching classes and you're addressing potential future cosmologists and quantum mechanics? What did you say? Quantum mechanics? No, what mechanicists?
Yeah, there's no good word for a person who does. Quantum physicist is good. Yeah.
Do you tell them about the potential pitfalls, and you maybe plant a seed in their head, like, hey, you can avoid this. You can still be competitive, but avoid all these traps that are essentially like these intellectual rabbit holes you can go down that are really not beneficial to anybody.
Yeah, if I'm formally teaching a class, if I'm standing up there in front of the lecture hall, 98% is teaching the material pretty straightforwardly. I try to dribble in little words of wisdom here and there, and especially if I think that there is a way that we always teach the subject that is wrong and wrong-headed and we should be doing it right, I try to highlight the differences. But if I'm advising students, like my graduate students or my undergraduates, then I lay on very hard my own perspective on how it is to be a scientist, and what is the good way to do it, and what's the bad way to do it, what are the pitfalls, and also just how to not make mistakes and trip up your own career. Yeah, that's crucially important.